Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of the L15weekly podcast, giving you the latest news, views and opinions from the football world. On this week's episode of L15weekly, we are talking it out and talking about Manchester City's potential Champions League ban. We welcome Athletics Manchester City correspondent Sam Lee for that one. Also, the latest reaction to all the Premier League fixtures. We give you your heroes of the week. We also have UCL reaction from the Champions League, talking about the clashes from midweek. And we also go under the microscope and look at Borussia Dortmund in focus. We welcome BVB Buzz's Tushar, who joins us on that segment to have a look at how Borussia Dortmund's seasons has gone so far. So let's have a look and get straight into this week's episode. Maybe wondering, about the L15 Weekly podcast, where has Talk It Out and where has Under the Microscope gone? Well, they're all in here in this podcast. We're going to be talking out Man City's Champions League ban. So let's talk about why it's come into place. So UEFA has claimed Manchester City has been found to commit serious breaches of the financial fair play regulations, and the club had overstated its sponsorship revenue. So they'd say we've got more money from sponsorships than we're actually saying. So the adjudicatory chamber also ruled that City had failed to cooperate with the investigation. The finding has resulted in a 2-year UEFA Champions League ban and €30 million fine, which is based on a small number of City's internal emails, which City claim are taken out of context. So that was sort of what was written in the statement by UEFA, on last Friday. But now let's look at the club statement from Manchester City. Let's look at the reaction from the club. So they said on Twitter, on their website, it said, Manchester City is disappointed but not surprised by today's announcement by the UEFA Adjudicatory Chamber. The club has always anticipated the ultimate need to seek out an independent body and process to impartially consider the comprehensive body of irrefutable evidence in support of its position. So, in a nutshell, that sort of means that UEFA have taken a bit of a biased investigation, that perhaps the investigation was against them from the start, so they would like to seek out an independent body to sort of almost find the truth and find a bit of justice that they feel is justice anyway. It may be the case that they are completely wrong. But City are due to appeal, and they hope for an impartial judgment as quickly as possible and commence proceedings with the Court of Arbitration for Sport at the earliest opportunity. City are also said to be confident of providing to the court that the guilty finding is wrong, saying they have irrefutable evidence that the finding is incorrect. So they're obviously very confident. It would be interesting to see why they're so confident that this ban can be overturned. But obviously it means a lot to City to be in the Champions League. So what impact will this have on Manchester City and indeed the rest of the Premier League? They could have a loss of up to £200 million in revenues on top of the €30 million fine, which is a big loss, and they may struggle to retain Pep Guardiola as manager. Some players may leave due to the Champions League being a core aspiration in relatively short careers. If the ban is upheld, the Premier League say that the 5th place team would qualify for the UEFA Champions League. So at the moment that would be Tottenham Hotspur, but wouldn't we all love to see Sheffield United be in, get into the Champions League? They are really in the running. They are 5th place. They are 6th place at the moment. So just behind Spurs, but they're only a point behind Spurs. So, who's to say Sheffield United won't be in the Champions League next season? Manager-wise, Man City have Mauricio Pochettino and Brendan Rodgers in the running to succeed Pep if he were to leave. And the executives at Manchester City held a crisis meeting with the squad last Saturday. Pep has come out and he has spoken out about this situation. He says, even if we are in League 2, I will still be managing Manchester City. So he obviously pledges to commit to the club, but obviously next week they have a Champions League tie against Real Madrid. So perhaps that could be make or break for Pep Guardiola, whether he were to stay or go. They've got a 2-legged tie there. If they were to go through, that brings a lot of hope. Can they go and win the Champions League? In what could be their final season for 2 years. But obviously that's going to have a big impact on Pep Guardiola and indeed the club's future. On this week's episode of L15 Weekly, I am joined by Sam Lee, who is the Manchester City correspondent for The Athletics. Sam, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Getting this interview in while I've got a spare 5 minutes. There's not been many of them this week.
Yeah. So the first question for you, Sam, is what have City done to get this potential Champions League ban from UEFA?
Okay, well, seeing as they keep saying they've got irrefutable proof that they haven't done anything, I'd better still say, despite the fact that
Yeah.
There were emails out of football leagues in Der Spiegel between club employees, again allegedly, that City will have to prove this allegedly.
Yeah.
That sponsorship agreement was only worth 8 million, and that Etihad were only paying 8 million, and that Sheikh Mansour, the club's owner, was putting in the rest of the money. So basically, the idea is Manchester City was saying we're getting all this money from sponsorship, but in reality, probably only 10 or 15% of that was actually from the sponsors, and the rest was from their owner, which is against financial fair play, because part of financial fair play is UEFA can decide what is fair market value for sponsorship. So yeah, that's what UEFA have found City guilty of.
Yeah, and why are City so confident of getting this overturned? Because you've seen their club statement. They say they have was it irrefutable evidence of getting this overturned. So why do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know, because it looks very bad.
Yeah.
And this is the whole argument that City fans have been having with, well, not every City fan, but this is the whole argument that City fans have been putting forward this week. They're saying that UEFA's concept is flawed, and that what the club are saying, and this is something that the club has said right from the start, is those email leaks I mentioned that were in football leagues, they say they were out of context. But I don't know why City feel they have this irrefutable evidence. I suppose they are going to be able to prove that those emails were not as they were portrayed in Der Spiegel, that those emails were taken out of context and made to look bad. I presume they're going to be able to show, I don't know, if this irrefutable evidence that the sponsorship isn't worth 8 million, it is worth the 65, and the Etihad are actually paying the 65. Whether that evidence is irrefutable enough, I guess we'll see. But yeah, that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to prove that the sponsorships are worth what they say they are, that they're being paid what they say they are, and that those emails were taken out of context. That's how they're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
But, how they actually do that, whether it's accounting methods, whether it's different accounting methods that are different to what they've already submitted, or whether it's publishing those emails in full, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and if this Champions League ban and €30 million fine go through, I mean, the 30 million for Man City probably won't mean a huge deal, but with the Champions League ban, what is this going to mean for the club if they can't get it overturned?
A lot of reputational damage, obviously. They've suffered a lot of that already. And the whole thing with the owners is, they want good PR, they want the club to be at the forefront of world football in terms of football and achievements, but also other issues. There's that side of things. If they can't get it overturned, then it would be very bad for them. The other side of it is it would be a huge hit financially. I think they earned something close to £100 million last year from the Champions League, and overall they made a profit of 10 million. So you take that away, that's a 90 million deficit.
Yeah.
They have got sponsorships which weren't in those books last year, so that 10 million profit wouldn't have accounted for the new Puma deal, which is worth a lot more money, and Marathon Bet, which is worth an extra 10 million a season. So there are ways of making up that deficit, but on one hand, you've basically got the fact that if they're going to make anything approaching a loss, they have to be much more careful with what they can spend on new players. They may have to let certain players go. The other element is some of these players, they think, oh well, you've got Champions League football for 2 years, then I'm going to go. So on the one hand, you've got players who may want to go, and on the other hand, if they've got big financial losses or close to big financial losses, they might have to sell a player, for example, Sane, who was probably going to go anyway, but they may not be able to replace him. So maybe it's Bernardo Silva in 18 months he goes, and they won't be able to replace him because of this. So we don't know too much at the moment, but that's the kind of thing. It is going to be a big financial hit because they earn so much from UEFA competitions, and the other side of it is if they do, then they're going to have to mitigate that financial hit somehow, and that's most likely through bigger sponsorships, which could be difficult with no Champions League football, or signing players.
And with next week's Champions League tie coming up against Real Madrid, how important is that for indeed Pep Guardiola, the squad?
Well, it was always huge anyway, because there's an incredibly high standard around City. There's always an incredibly high standard around Guardiola as well, and after winning the Premier League in the last 2 years, doing so well to do it, and falling behind Liverpool so far this season, there will be criticism of them at the end of the season. If they could win the Champions League, then that would be severely mitigated, that criticism. It would be, well, okay, they've won the Champions League, so fair enough. They'll probably still get criticised anyway for having been found guilty of cheating. But effectively, if they were to win the Champions League even before all this, that would be huge. That that'll be good for the club. It would, it's the thing that people always say the owners want. It's the thing that people always say Pep Guardiola needs to do to somehow prove himself again since he left Barcelona. So that would be huge. But yeah, now with the FFP in mind, I suppose it would be a bit of a two fingers up to everybody, especially UEFA, if they were to win it. As a kind of, well, we'll see you in 2 years, but we have won it, so I can't matter.
Yeah, and with Pep Guardiola only having, some about a year left on his contract with June 2021? Can you see him leaving before that contract runs out?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult because there's been a lot of rumours all season that he was going to leave even before this, and on Friday night when the news broke, there was even more rumours straight away that he was going to leave. I've always been told by people close to him, like before this and since Friday, that there's no way he's going to leave. He'll see out his contract at least, and then he'll take it from there. But also he said many times publicly that he'll definitely see out his contract, and then maybe he'll extend it. But as far as I know, whether he extends it or not, that always was going to depend on how the squad looks at the start of next season. If they make enough changes to keep everything fresh and to make sure the players are still listening to what he wants, which I think is pretty much fundamental to any manager. But now if they've got the Champions League ban hanging over them, they might be able to go and sign the 4 or 5 players they did want. So that's an interesting one. But no, I don't think Guardiola's going to leave early.
Okay, well, Sam, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem, mate.
So let's start by talking about the Premier League. So we'll go back to Friday night, exactly a week ago for when you're listening to this, which was Leicester 0, Wolves 0, which saw Wolves disallowed a goal by VAR. It also saw Hamza Chowdhury sent off after a second bookable offence. It leaves Leicester 9 points clear of 4th place Chelsea, Wolves 8th, 5 points off 4th place. Patricio had a good game for Wolves, saving 3 shots but having a good distribution with 9 successful passes and a penalty box ball claim. So it's a very interesting game there. Willy Bolly saw his goal disallowed by VAR. Nuno Espirito Santo was not happy about that, to say the least. But VAR, it's always going to be in the centre of attention when it's in this sort of football, and when you're getting these sort of really, really accurate decisions. I think we could do with some of those in the Championship, but I don't think VAR would be so well welcome, as the physicality of the Championship would probably lead to a lot of people getting sent off. Leicester had the majority of the ball, as a lot of teams do against Wolves. Wolves like to hit on the counter, which they are incredibly good at. 59% possession for Leicester and 41% for Wolves. Wolves created 11 chances compared to Leicester's 7, obviously, as we can see with the counter-attacking there. Leicester had a pass success percentage of 83%, with Wolves having 74%. So it's a very interesting game for them. It's a very interesting game, really, overall. I know it was 0-0, but there were lots of key events there which could have gone either side's way. I think Willy Bolly's goal was ruled out for a slight offside when the short corner was played. I think it was João Moutinho who whipped the ball in there, but I think it must have been his toe hair or something, which was offside for Wolves. Next Premier League fixture to be played was Southampton 1, Burnley 2 at the St Mary's Stadium. Ashley Westwood scored a goal which was assisted by Storm Dennis in that game, where the ball, it was a corner. Ashley Westwood took it, he swerved the ball in, and it just sort of swerved past Danny Ings at the front post and past Alex McCarthy in goal. It was a very, very strange goal how that ended up going in. Danny Ings then equalised later on, making up for that sort of error in the first half, and substitute Matej Vidra scored the winner for Burnley with a first goal of the season. He still hasn't started for Burnley this season. He's made multiple substitute appearances off the bench, which was very, very strange, but he's scored his first goal this season. He's made 7 substitute appearances, but no starts for Burnley this season. Jeff Hendrick was my personal man of the match, with the Republic of Ireland international getting a 7.9 rating. He assisted Vidra's goal with 10 successful passes, 2 key passes and 7 ball recoveries for the Burnley man there. So a decent game there at Burnley and Southampton. Southampton sitting 12th. They are with 31 points. They're pretty clear of relegation, you'd say, really. 7 points clear, you can't see them losing that. But Burnley, they're just above Southampton now with 34 points. They were level on points before this game started, so a pretty decent mid-table class. Burnley, Can they be looking up? Can they be looking up and thinking, we're only 6 points for that 5th spot, which is now going to be used for the Champions League? Can Burnley get themselves up there? It's going to be interesting to see that. Let's now move on to Norwich and Liverpool, which was the evening kick-off on Saturday. It wasn't an easy task for Liverpool, really, not as easy as they would have expected. Alisson denied Pukki a tap-in earlier on in the game, which was a huge moment there, they tried to, I think it was Vrancic who tried to just pass it across to Pukki, and he just couldn't get it in because Alisson had palmed the ball away. Norwich didn't cause Liverpool too many problems, but they did look a bit more secure defensively, which was good, with Hanley and Zimmerman both having good games. My man of the match was Scottish international Andy Robertson, the left back for Liverpool, who had 6 ball recoveries, 3 duels won, 82% pass accuracy. Again, him and Alexander-Arnold with so much energy, really driving Liverpool forward on the, almost playing as wingers, which is really interesting to see for Liverpool. Liverpool 25 points clear now. Nobody's catching them really. And can they push on in the Champions League? They've got some really interesting ties at Atletico to come. Moving to Sunday's fixtures now, and Aston Villa suffered a narrow loss to Tottenham, 3-2. Villa went ahead after 9 minutes through Toby Alderweireld's own goal, who made amends after 27 minutes by scoring down the other end, equalising for Tottenham Hotspur. Villa gave away a penalty, which Reina saved, but Son converted the rebound. Bjorn Engels scored after 53 minutes to level the score, and 90 plus 4 minutes on the clock. Engels lets the ball slip under his foot, allowing Son to race through and send Spurs 5th in the table. That is the Champions League position now, of course. But it was poor defending by Bjorn Engels there. Villa, they looked so good, but once they were 2-2, wouldn't you take a point at home to Spurs? But no, they carried on pushing for the win, and it was just sort of a long ball over the top, and it sort of came down to Engels, and Engels failed to clear, and Son just raced through. Would you not just packed up and tried to take a draw instead of pushing higher and allowing Son that sort of pace on the in behind and on the counter attack? My man of the match, of course, was Heung-min Son. 2 goals, 73% pass accuracy, and 2 key passes for the Korean international. A very interesting game at Villa Park. The Sunday game was Arsenal 4, Newcastle 0, which was a real Jekyll and Hyde performance from Arsenal. The first half was absolutely appalling from Arsenal. They were booed by Arsenal fans. Twitter was going absolutely mad. Arsenal Fan TV, I dread to think if that went on throughout the whole game. I dread to think what they'd be thinking. And then the second half, they were so electric. They were just, I can't even explain how good Arsenal were in that second half. It was like pure. Arteta had gone in there and given them a good slap at half time. Goals from Aubameyang, Pepe, Ozil and Lacazette were sealing the deal for Arsenal. Arsenal had 68% possession, 585 accurate passes, 91% pass success, dominating with 27 shots on target. That brought them to a second win under Mikel Arteta. They've been drawing quite a lot, but could this be the start of going on the up for Arsenal? My man of the match was Nicola Pepe, who got a goal, 2 assists, a hand in nearly all of the goals. 83% pass completion rate with 10 ball recoveries and 2 successful dribbles. A dynamite performance from the Ivorian, if I may say so. But he was really good in this game against Newcastle. So Arsenal, could they be on the up now? They're in a reasonable, well, not really reasonable for Arsenal, but they're going back to sort of where they were. Could they have their eyes on the Champions League places? I don't quite think so. But with 34 points, maybe 6 points away from 5th, could they mount a very, very late push for the Champions League? But there are some better sides ahead of them at the moment. I think Sheffield United, Manchester United, Wolves, Everton, all above them. Newcastle, 31 points, sitting in 13th. They're not in really any danger of going down. I think the ones in danger of going down are probably pick Brighton in there as well. Brighton, Bournemouth, Aston Villa, West Ham, Watford, Norwich. Obviously, it's going to be a difficult push for relegation, but Newcastle and Bukayo Saka, he destroyed Lazaro's Newcastle career before it even started, with that nutmeg. But really good game there at the Emirates. Moving on chronologically to the Monday night game between Chelsea and Man United, which finished Chelsea 0, Man United 2, which was a game overshadowed by VAR. Chelsea had 2 goals ruled out. Zuma's header was ruled out after Azpilicueta pushed Brandon Williams in the build-up, from the corner, which I thought was pretty harsh, because if you look at the replays, you can see that Fred pushes Azpilicueta into Brandon Williams, which he can't really help, and then Zuma. But neither of them touched the ball. I think Brandon Williams, should that contact not have been made, would have made the header. But it's a push from Fred as well. So, but Zuma did head in, but that was disallowed. Giroud was in fact offside after scoring a header as well. But he was offside, but it was only by a toenail, I think. Some may argue, Man United fans and Chelsea fans have been arguing, Maguire shouldn't have been on the pitch after kicking out at Batshuayi. What happened was Maguire cleared the ball. Batshuayi came in a bit late. It wasn't a rash challenge at all. It was a bit of a, I'm putting you under pressure now, and Maguire went down. But as Maguire sort of rolled onto his back, he kicked Batshuayi in the nether regions, if you like, from Harry Maguire. But it's a similar challenge to the one Son got sent off for earlier in the season, and he did get sent off. So I don't see why Anthony Taylor didn't go and look at the screen for that one. I think it's all about referee's interpretation, that particular foul. So why doesn't he go and look at the screen? It's confusing as to why he didn't do that, but a goal from Martial, which is a really good header, after a really good cross from Wan-Bissaka, I thought. And then that second goal was headed in by Maguire from a corner. First assist for Bruno Fernandes. My man of the match for that game, I was watching, was Eric Bailly, who won all 5 of his aerial duels, every one that he went into, an 85% pass completion rate, with 2 clearances and 6 tackles. He's been on the bench for a while, Eric Bailly, for Manchester United. It's been a return from injury for the Ivorian man. It's interesting because Victor Nelson Lindelof is out with an injury now. They had Odion Ighalo for Man United. He played a minute. Came on in the 90th minute for Bruno Fernandes, and it was an interesting substitution. But he came on and he had a shot on target, which it's strange. He was on there for a minute and he had a shot success and pass success of 100%. So an interesting one for Manchester United there. But obviously Odion Ighalo, who's been in a lot of controversy regarding the coronavirus, people not letting him travel here, there and everywhere. So it's an interesting game for Manchester United with a good win against Chelsea. Let's have a look at what that means for each team in the table. Chelsea sit 4th, 41 points. They're 1 point above Tottenham and 9 points away from Leicester. Man United are 7th with 38 points, 2 points away from that newly created Champions League spot, which people are sort of starting to swarm around. But Man United, they're still well within reach of Chelsea themselves. They're only 3 points off the actual top 4, but this top 5 now. It's going to be very interesting to see how they get on. Moving on to Wednesday night's game, which was Man City and West Ham, which was a game that was rearranged. It was a victim, if you like, of Storm Dennis, and rearranged due to bad weather. Man City came out on top in this game 2-0 against West Ham. De Bruyne swung in a corner early on after about 30 minutes, which record signing Rodri knocked in with a front post header. It was a very, very strange one. It just sort of looped over everybody else. But it was a very good goal from Rodri. The second goal came from a really good link-up play between Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne, where De Bruyne sort of takes the ball off Bernardo Silva and scores the goal at the near post past Fabianski. It was a very decent game. Obviously, West Ham sort of rolling over, if you like, and just letting City take the victory. It was a very professional performance from City after the issues with UEFA. Obviously, 77% of ball possession for Manchester City. 18 chances created for Man City as well. So they were in complete control. Jared Bowen made his debut for West Ham. He wasn't that great. Came on with 10 minutes to go. He didn't complete a successful dribble, but that's not really a game you need to judge him in. You need to judge him in the ones that are going to be closer than this game. But the man of the match from everybody was Kevin De Bruyne, who only played 79 minutes, came off after 79 for Ilkay Gundogan. He created 7 chances, scored a goal and got an assist. 86% pass accuracy with 2 shots on target and 6 key passes. So a very interesting game there at the Etihad. So let's go into the EFL and have a look at the fixtures over the previous weekend and see how they have affected the league table. So let's start with the game that I was at, and that was West Brom 2, Nottingham Forest 2, which was the lunchtime kickoff on Saturday. The refereeing decisions in the game caused a lot of controversy. So with Keith Stroud being the referee, a lot of fans, both West Brom and Nottingham Forest, claiming that he was appalling. Now, I feel Pereira, personally, was being kicked around the park, and I think Keith Stroud did fail to stamp down on that. But on the other hand, Livermore was lucky to still be on the pitch after a sort of kung fu tackle on Yuri Ribeiro in the first half. I didn't actually see it, but as I look at it on the replays and I've looked at the highlights, it was definitely, yellow to red card challenge due to the highness, and it was above his knee, so, pretty high there. Next to it, West Brom were denied an added time winner after Bartley was judged to be offside, but the ball hit him after, he was, half of him was on the pitch, half of him wasn't, half of him was behind the goal line, half of him, but the part hit was behind the goal line. Now, I'm not sure what the exact rules are on that, but I can only imagine that if you're not in play, surely you can't be offside. But, back to the football. Robinson struck early, midway through the first half. Bartley put through his own net just before the break. Then Figueiredo put a similar own goal away in the second half, very similar to Bartley's, just with an attacker behind him. He just ended up clipping it into his own net with a great strike from Matty Cash to equalise late on for Forest. Forest, again, they're showing their ability to hang into the games, showing the ability to, even if they are losing, they still got a chance and they're still staying and hanging in games, and that's real a credit to manager Sabri Lamouchi. So the man of the match for me was Callum Robinson, who scored a goal. He had 3 successful dribbles, 7 ball recoveries, 25 successful passes, and an average rating of 7.9. He provided a real bright spark for West Brom, a lot of creativity, and he's been really good since coming on loan from Sheffield United. Another notable mention for me was Bryce Samba, who is the Nottingham Forest goalkeeper. He got 7 saves. He made a critical stop from Livermore's volley and stopped Robinson from curling one from outside the area, so he was really solid in there, Bryce Samba. That leaves Forest 5th and leaves Baggies top, but Forest still, really pushing towards the automatic places. And we asked you guys on Twitter, is the refereeing standard in the EFL good enough? And 14% of you said yes, the EFL has good enough referees. No was 86%, so 86% of you thought the standard of refereeing in the EFL is not good enough. Here are a couple of comments on Twitter. So EFL the 72 said absolutely not. Ben Race 91 said the referee and the linesman are absolutely shocking. And Russell Cox said, I'd say it's not perfect, but it's probably the same level as the players on the field. Now, I'd say that this season, watching West Brom quite a lot, they've had a real supplement of shocking refereeing, and obviously watching other games in the Championship, I don't think it's good enough. I don't think VAR would help at all, in all fairness. I think a lot of players would get sent off, and as I think the Championship is a more physical league than the Premier League, but I don't think the standard of refereeing is good enough in the Championship. So let's move on to the next Championship fixture, which was Birmingham 1, Brentford 1, which was a good clash at the St Andrews Trillion Stadium. Birmingham's defence looked very strong to keep out Brentford's great attack, which was missing Brian Mbeumo, but still had Ben Rama and Watkins. So Lucas Jutkovic struck early after 13 minutes, with the Bees striking with a goal from Ethan Pinnock 4 minutes later. Brentford had the majority of the ball with 65% possession to Birmingham's 35%. Brentford evidently having more quality usage of the ball, with 78% of their passes reaching their intended targets, compared to Birmingham's 63% pass success rate. The Blues did create their own opportunities with 12 shots throughout, with Brentford only having one more with 13. My man of the match for that game was Gary Gardner, who had a great game for the Blues with an assist. He had 6 ball recoveries, 10 duels won, 18 successful passes and 1 key pass. He was a real engine in that midfield for the Blues. And obviously that's going to dent, but not completely destroy Brentford's playoff hopes. But, you'd hope that when you come to a side like Birmingham away, you'd hope to go and get perhaps just sneak a win, maybe with a goal. But Brentford are 4th now with 55 points. They're 4 points off the automatic spots, but they are still 2 points clear of 7th place, so not in too much danger of dropping out, but there is that slight chance that they will. Birmingham 14th with 44 points, but they haven't lost in their last 8 games for Birmingham. They have drawn quite a few, but their defence seems to be, sort of patching itself up, really. They've sort of dropped Harley Dean down to the bench, and they've now got Jake Clark-Salter at centre-back. So that's a really good move in there for Birmingham, and they're doing really well at the moment. Maybe they could mount a bit of a playoff push. They're only 9 points away, so. And with the Championship, really anything can happen. The next game in the EFL Championship that we're going to talk about is Fulham 0, Barnsley 3. Probably the biggest upset of the weekend, definitely, but one of the biggest upsets of the season, where promotion chasers Fulham were handed a huge blow to their automatic promotion bid, with Cauley Woodrow scoring twice against his former club, with an assist for Jacob Brown as well. Fulham had the lion's share of possession in that game, really, with 41% to Barnsley and 59% to Fulham. Fulham's overall dominating the game with 21 shots to Barnsley's 7. So Barnsley had 6 shots on targets to Fulham 7, with 3 of those shots going in, so a 50% shot conversion rate. It would be easy to choose Cauley Woodrow as player of the match, with him scoring twice and assisting once, but a big mention must go to Barnsley's goalkeeper Bradley Collins, who made 7 saves during the game and also made a key pass, which is pretty good for a goalkeeper. So it begs the question, does Parker maybe doesn't know his best midfield 3? He's been rotating McDonald and Arter in recent games, which is a bit confusing as to who's going to play the holding midfielder, for the rest of the season. They seem to have got things right so far this season, but maybe Parker does not know the best way to go about playing that midfield sort of lineup. It's a difficult decision, but Kevin McDonald played 53 minutes last week, but was subbed off when Bobby Reid came on, and also Arter came on for Tom Kearney in that game. But Fulham stay third, but they're now 3 points off Leeds. Barnsley is still bottom, but only 6 points off, hauling themselves out of the relegation zone. But a very big shock over at Craven Cottage. Another big story in the Championship is Leeds. Leeds 1, Bristol 0. Leeds are sort of coming through that bad patch now. Leeds have failed to win in 5 of their last 6 league games, which were a very good performance in the draw against Brentford on Tuesday, which has sort of inspired them along to victory against Bristol. A goal from Luke Ayling after 16 minutes won them the game, with a very good overall performance. Leeds were very good. Yeah, Leeds were excellent, with Luke Ayling being the man of the match for me, with an 8.2 average rating, with 53 accurate passes, with a 79% pass success and 2 successful tackles. But the big topic of this week is Calvin Phillips. A lot of people mentioning maybe he should be going for England. Let's have a look at his stats over this game. So Calvin Phillips did come back from suspension against Brentford after a 3-game ban, and he had a really good game today against Bristol again, with an 8.0 rating, an 85% pass accuracy, 3 chances created, 2 tackles, 100% success rate in a tackle, and 11 ball recoveries. So we asked you guys on Twitter, should Calvin Phillips be in the England squad? The results were very, very conclusive. 852 of you guys on Twitter voted, with 91% of you saying yes and 9% of you saying no. Let's have a look at what some of you said about that. The Square Ball podcast said yes. The Leeds United FC podcast said no. Next season, keep him fresh. Leeds Man 15 said silly question, better than Rice. So that's mixed opinions among Leeds fans. Some people really want to see him for England, but some people want to see him hold off until next season in the England squad. But looking at him and Declan Rice, you'd think that Calvin Phillips is a bit more experienced than Declan Rice, despite the fact Declan Rice playing in the Premier League. You'd think Calvin Phillips has had plenty more big games to play than Declan Rice. But Calvin Phillips, obviously, the stats are showing that he's really good, but people being a bit snobbish, among the Twitter community for me, saying that he's playing in the Championship, but that's not really his fault. Players in teams in the Premier League have been looking at Calvin Phillips, but also players, if he goes up with Leeds, what are people going to say next? He is a really good midfielder for me, Calvin Phillips, and I think he does a really good job for Leeds, and I think he should really be looked at by Gareth Southgate for the England squad soon. Looking back at the game, Bristol's playoff hopes were slightly tainted, but they are sitting 7th and they're level on points with 6th place Preston. Leeds still sits 2nd, 4 points off West Brom and 3 points clear of Fulham. So Leeds are in a pretty decent position for automatic promotion, as they look to have come through that sort of bad patch where they failed to win in 5 of their last 6 league games. So now we're going to move on to the EFL Championship. We're staying there, but we're moving down the table a little bit, but only a couple of places, to Blackburn. And it's hard to ignore them at the moment due to their really good form. But they've only lost 1 of their last 7, and that was against Fulham. They're mounting a playoff push under Tony Mowbray, sitting 8th, 3 points off the playoffs. So it's a real big form for them. They've got no Bradley Dack. They haven't had him since the 23rd of December 2019. He's been out with a cruciate ligament injury. 9 goals and an assist this season for Blackburn. He's a big loss, but clearly they're doing all right without him. You know, players like Stuart Downing have been stepping up to the plate and filling the void, with 2 goals and 7 assists for the Rovers this season for Stuart Downing. And also another notable mention has to go to Tosin Adarabioyo, with a good prospect for the 22-year-old. He's on loan from Man City. He was at West Brom last year. I watched him quite closely. He was all right. I didn't think he was quite up to the Championship, but clearly he's proving me wrong. With 2 clean sheets in the last 2 games, helping Blackburn keep the second most clean sheets in the league, joint second clean sheets, I should say, with 11. He's also scored 2 goals for Blackburn, so he's been pretty good for them this season on loan from Man City. And we asked you guys, the Blackburn Rovers fans, we asked you, can you finish in the playoffs? And it was a pretty conclusive vote, with 70% of you saying yes, you can make the playoffs, and 30% of you saying no, you can't. But obviously it is the Championship. But I think Blackburn, you know, with the form they've been in, what's stopping them really? You know, they've been really good so far. A lot of teams being beaten by Blackburn so far this season, and they're really showing the league what they can do under Tony Mowbray. They haven't got a really big budget in the Championship. They've been really good, beating Sheffield Wednesday 5-0 on the 18th of January. They also beat QPR 2-1, 3-0 at Hull, 2-0 at Charlton. So they're beating the teams that they need to beat, but that was coming off the back of a pretty dire run of form. But they're beating a lot of the teams they need to beat. I think the one thing that Blackburn could probably improve upon would be beating teams that are above them, beating teams that are going for automatic places. So they lost 2-0 to Fulham. They also lost 3-2 to West Brom. They also lost 2-1 to Leeds. But they did beat Brentford, but obviously, and Forest losing 3-2 to Forest as well. But they need to just start beating the teams that are a bit above them. Next game, Blackburn have Brentford, so they beat them 1-0 last time. Maybe they could go out and get a win there and push themselves a bit further towards the playoffs. The next team we're going to focus on in the EFL Championship is Sheffield Wednesday, who have a few staggering stats for them at the moment this season, in a bad way really. They haven't won in the league since 11th of January. They haven't scored at home since 2019. And I've been speaking to a few Sheffield Wednesday fans on Twitter, and lots of them think that they've got a lot of leftover players from failed playoff attempts. Obviously, they are nowhere near the playoffs at the moment. They are, at the moment, 12th, which isn't too far away, I suppose. They're 9 points. I mean, we did say Birmingham could get up there. They can get up there, but they're in such dire form. They haven't won for a month and 7 days. A desperate squad rebuild is needed in the summer, really. Gary Monk, apparently, according to Sheffield Wednesday fans, has been taking a lot of the criticism, but he doesn't perhaps deserve it. The players haven't been putting in enough effort, apparently, for Sheffield Wednesday. And, you know, they're in a bit of financial trouble with potential point docking, which could put them, you know, in relegation trouble. So not a good time for Sheffield Wednesday. You know, they lost 3-0 to Reading at the weekend, and they weren't particularly great there. So it'd be interesting to see if Sheffield can pick up a bit of form. They are playing Birmingham, who are around them in the table. They're also playing Charlton in the next game after that, who are down at near the bottom of the table. So, you know, maybe there's a chance for a revival at Sheffield. They haven't got particularly difficult fixtures up, although I do say they have got Manchester City in the FA Cup soon. But, you know, it'd be interesting to see if Sheffield can get themselves out of this bit of a mess. We're going to move down the leagues now to League One, and we've just got a couple of teams, one from League One and one from League Two, to focus on at the moment. Because, you know, I'm not that well informed on League One, but I've been keeping up with things, and I have been scouting out to see who's been, you know, on good runs of form, bad runs of form. So there were wins in League One for Accrington, Wycombe, Bristol Rovers, Fleetwood, Gillingham, Ipswich, Sunderland, Portsmouth and Coventry over the weekend. And we, at the moment, are going to talk about Ipswich, who won 4-1 at Burton, and Judge scored twice, Alan Judge, and Caden Jackson scored twice as well for them. They're managed by Paul Lambert at the moment, if you didn't know. They are just outside the playoffs. It's a very tight playoff race in League 1, with 5 points between 1st and 7th. They're coming off the back of not winning in the last 4 before Burton, so like Leeds, could be on a bit of a good run at the moment. So our man of the match for that game was Alan Judge, who played 82 minutes. He scored 2 goals, got an assist, had a 76% pass percentage completion rate, and 4 chances created. He was very good in the air with 3 duels won. So, a pretty decent performance for Alan Judge. And Ipswich looking to get straight back up to the Championship after coming down last season. Now it's time to drop down a league and talk about Stevenage, who at bottom of League 2, and it's not really the fairy story that we'd like to talk about here on L15 Weekly, where we've spoken about Ipswich, who are on the up, we've spoken about Leeds, who are on the up. We got Stevenage, who are in danger of dropping out the Football League. They are 7 points off leaving the relegation zone. Obviously, it's a different situation to other teams, but Graham Wesley has left Stevenage Borough after a 1-0 home defeat against Salford City on the weekend, marking a 6th straight league loss. 7 points adrift at the bottom of the table. He's been replaced, though. They found a replacement by former player Alex Ravel, who will take charge for the remaining 12 games of the season. He retired last season. He's 36 years old, and he has his first game against Crawley on Saturday. So there's still hope of survival, but if not, maybe this is a bit of a long-term project for Stevenage to try and get them back up the table. Obviously, they've been in a real poor run of form. They haven't won since Saturday the 18th of January against Cambridge, and that was a pretty convincing run, but they've been on a real dire run. They've lost 3-0 to Exeter, 2-1 to Plymouth, 3-1 to Grimsby, 3-0 to Leyton Orient, 2-1 to Exeter, 3-1 to Bradford, and as we just heard, they lost 1-0 to Salford. Let's have a look at the winners from League 2, though. Cambridge won 2-1 at Bradford, Cheltenham 2-1 against Leyton Orient. It was a 0-0 draw between Crawley and Carlisle. Grimsby 2, Morecambe 1, Exeter 3, Macclesfield 2, Mansfield 1, Newport 0, Oldham 1, Forest Green 1, Plymouth 2, Crewe Alexandra 1, Port Vale 3, Colchester 0, and Stevenage 0, obviously Salford City 1. A big clash there between Crewe and Plymouth, which resulted in a win for Plymouth with a goal from Harry Pickering opened the scoring for Crewe Alexandra. Luke Jeffcott and Antoni Sarvecchi scored the 2 goals for Plymouth, who sit pretty in the table at 4th place, with Crewe Alexandra just 1 point above them now, so a big game there in League 2. In this episode of L15 Weekly, we welcome Justin from the Second Tier podcast. So the first question I've got to ask you, Justin, has the Championship lived up to its reputation of being the maddest league in the world, the most unpredictable?
Yeah, I think that the Championship has lived up to its reputation. It's always been known as an unpredictable league. However, this season's certainly been highlighted. You go to the very first game of the season, Barnsley beating Fulham 1-0. Nobody saw that result coming, especially the transfer windows that both sides had. Very different in terms of the money they spent. Obviously, you look back now and teams are where they should be, but there are certain games like that where you think, well, hold on a minute, that's not supposed to happen. You think back to the Wigan Leeds as well at Ellen Road. Wigan won, I think, 1 away game all season at that point, and they pick up their second away win of the season at Leeds, who have a very, they dominate games at home with the amount of chances they had, but they couldn't break through. It's one of those games that's known as an acca buster. So yeah, certainly unpredictable. Going back to November, I think Leeds and West Brom were 12 points ahead of third, and that Leeds now being cut. So yeah, it's unpredictable. I think I questioned whether or not the standard had dropped. I think it has a little bit, but that's partly due to teams not spending as much money as they have done in previous seasons. However, that has added to the vast unpredictableness of it, if that's a saying. Teams in the top six, it's become very competitive, and I think that's the key word. I think you probably go back to 13th or 14th, going all the way back to the teams in those positions of the table. They have a realistic chance of finishing the playoffs. There's still a few games left to play and a lot of points to play for. So, yeah, definitely unpredictable.
Which teams have surprised you this season?
I think the team that has probably surprised us the most has been Blackburn. They've quietly gone about the business, unopposed to other sides. They haven't spent monumental amounts that, the Fulhams, West Broms, even Leeds, probably outspend Blackburn in both wages and transfer fees. But as I say, they've quietly gone about their business. They've had injuries to key players. You look at Bradley Dack being ruled out for a long time, and then Lewis Holtby. Greg Cunningham got injured as well, who brought a lot of balance to their defence at a key time in the season, this season. So for them to still remain competitive, not only competitive, but be competing in the top half of the table against teams that have been there and done it in that top 12 has been huge. The rise of Adam Armstrong has been monumental to their season. He's a player who's got so much potential and so much ability as well. He's quick. He's a good finisher. He's got great feet. He's one of those proverbial fox in the box type strikers as well. He's got the full package, apart from maybe not being as tall as other strikers, but I think that's to his benefit. He's versatile as well, and Tony Mowbray certainly rotated that forward line. And at one point in the season, Blackburn fans were not happy. Mowbray could have gone, but they're looking very good for the future. They've got some good youth products in there. John Buckley, Lewis Travis, obviously Darragh Lenihan, who's been around for a while. He's come through the academy. It's a really good group at Blackburn, and I would not be surprised to see them competing in the top half of the table again next season, and maybe even the playoffs. Another side that surprised us is Millwall. There's no two ways about it. Millwall are competing well out of their budget and high up the table. Gary Rowett has taken this Millwall side to a completely new level. I think when Neil Harris left and Rowett came in, I immediately thought, so did Ryan, that hold on a minute, I think Rowett can get this team playing, and he certainly shifted the style of play. He's got more out of Jed Wallace that we didn't think there could be any more coming out of him. In terms of productivity, he's been amazing this season, and so have Millwall. And again, they're another side, I think, who can compete in the top half of the table for years to come, or for the coming seasons, I should say. I think we've also been surprised by Stoke City. At the start of the season, I don't want to guess, but I think I predicted them to finish in the top 6 maybe. I think Ryan disagreed somewhat, but they've massively let everybody down. Their XG suggests they should be higher up the table. They carve out some quality chances in games, but they just haven't had anybody to take them. It's been poor individual errors almost in every game they've lost that has let them down. And unfortunately, as I've mentioned before on the pod, it's cost good managers their jobs. You look at Gary Rowett, what he's getting out of this Millwall side now. That could have been Stoke City quite easily, but I think it comes down to that overpaid big time Charlies that have let that club down, and Michael O'Neill needs to throw the book at it and start again almost, I think.
Who has the best defence in the league?
Best defence in the league is an easy one. It's obviously Brentford. Obviously statistically they've got the best defence, but I think you look at Leeds as well, who defend so differently to other sides. They're not organised and compact. They counter-press. They press you into oblivion, if you like. They make it so hard for teams to play against them that, the teams that they do play against have such a low number of chances against them. It certainly takes a little bit of luck and a little bit of guile for teams to go or to get a goal against Leeds. You've got to work very, very hard for it. And as I said, a lot of their defeats has maybe involved a bit of luck. So I'd almost argue that Leeds have the best defence in the league. But obviously, statistically, it's Brentford. But they are looking a little bit leaky without Pontus Jansson in that side. However, Ethan Pinnock has rose to the top of his game, and they play a fairly open, expansive game of football, but they do it with such control now. They've certainly moved levels above where they were last season, because they were a side that could easily score 3 goals but would also concede 3 goals. So yeah, it's hard to pick between those two, and I think honourable mentions are obviously teams like Millwall, Blackburn, as I've mentioned, West Brom as well, who again, they leak goals, but they can carve out results, and they've got a lot of experienced heads in there. But certainly, it's hard to look past Leeds and Brentford for that.
Who will be relegated to League One?
Yeah, we discussed relegation to League One on our latest episode of the podcast. Again, it's hard to predict, as I've mentioned already. The league is so difficult. Obviously, with its reputation of being unpredictable and competitive, teams like Charlton, Borough, Stoke, they're all looking over their shoulder, and Huddersfield as well. They're all looking over their shoulder. I think they're only 4 points off Wigan. So it's hard to say who's going to get relegated now, because Luton and Barnsley are starting to pick up points, and Wigan are starting to score goals, which they haven't done all season. Unfortunately, they're still conceding at the same time, but since the turn of the year, performances at Wigan have been so much better than they were in the first half of the season. So it's going to be an interesting run-in. I wouldn't be surprised if the current bottom 3 go down, but I also wouldn't be surprised if one or two of those sides manage to scrape it and we have a few surprises at the end of the season. I predict a little bit of a surprise come the end of the season. I think Stoke, Charlton and Huddersfield certainly have issues. Maybe not so much Huddersfield. Stoke and Charlton, a bit of a worry for them.
Who do you think the top 6 is going to consist of this season?
Yeah, key word comes to mind is competitive, unpredictable. So we may see changes to the top 6 come the end of the season. However, looking at West Brom and Leeds, don't think those two are going to fall out of the top 6. Fulham, Brentford, again, think they're nailed on for a top 6 finish. Forest, definitely going to finish 5th. Should have mentioned that. They obviously have one of the best defences in the league as well. Definitely one of the more organised teams, and I think that's going to propel them into the top 6. So it's that 6th place really that's up for grabs. You've got Bristol City, Preston, Millwall. There are a lot of teams that are knocking on the door for that 6th place, and again, there are going to be a few twists and turns. I do think Bristol City might edge it, but Preston are looking almost better and better each week, a bit like their form in the sort of first third of the season before it tailed off. So yeah, I think it's going to be that 6th place is going to be between Bristol City and Preston North End, certainly. But yeah, West Brom, Leeds, Fulham, Brentford, Forest, Bristol City or Preston. Really hard to choose between those two sides.
And with those predictions in mind, do you think those teams, the teams that were to go up, will they cement their position in the top flight if they were to go up?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. Can the teams going up stay up and cement a position in the top flight? It's really, again, it's one of those ones that's very hard to predict. You've got teams like Wolves who have gone up in the past, but they've had a plan in place for years. For a couple of years since the new owners came in, and they've brought very, very well, first at championship level, and then going into the Premier League, they invested really well for their system. So I think teams that are going to have a realistic chance of staying up in the top flight have to have a system. They have to have good recruitment. Again, looking at Sheffield United, they're a team that has settled on a system and they've recruited for that system, and it's paying dividends for this season for them. Certainly, I think someone like Brentford, they recruit for their system, they play good football. It's whether or not the players that can make a step up as a group. I do worry for Leeds. I think the lack of chances they convert is ultimately going to bite them in the arse going into the Premier League. Which sounds harsh, but yeah, it's notoriously one of those leagues that if you don't take your chances, you get punished. And Leeds have been punished for it this season, so they'll certainly get punished in the top flight should they go up. Fulham, they've got good resources. Didn't work out for them last time, but I think they might learn from that lesson, hopefully. So, it's all about resources, recruiting well for a system that you're going to play, and almost keeping a good core group of players that got you up in the first place. As I mentioned, Fulham recruited heavily when they went up, and it didn't work out well for them, and ultimately they've come down with almost exactly the same squad that they went up with a couple of seasons ago, except that squad didn't play for them last season. It was a completely different group of players almost. And again, looking at Aston Villa this season, who have recruited similarly to what Fulham did to the season before, it's not working as well as they thought it would. So, as I've mentioned, good recruitment, keeping a core group of players and having a system you're set on playing, I think is going to help. And Brentford have that. You can almost argue Forest have that, and maybe even West Brom and Leeds as well. But each team has a weakness that they're going to have to recruit on to overcome, and that's where it comes down to ultimately.
Thank you very much to Justin from the Second Tier podcast for doing that for us. You can go and check that out with the links in the description. A personal favourite podcast of mine that I listen to every week. So make sure to go and listen to that one. It's time for the weekly segment here on L15 Weekly, where we give you the best players of the weekend. We talk about who you think has been really good this over the past week of football, and it is Heroes of the Week. So let's start with number one, and we start with Suso of Sevilla, who got a goal and an assist in their 2-2 draw versus Espanyol for Sevilla. He created 7 chances in the match, also had a pass success rate of 74%, 2 shots on target, 5 successful dribbles, 2 successful tackles. So he's recently transferred to Sevilla from AC Milan. Only made 3 starts so far for Sevilla, but he has had 80% successful passes, 6 dribbles, 9 key passes, and an average rating of 7.12 since joining the Spanish side. When he was at AC Milan, he got a goal. He got some assists as well. He got 16 appearances as well, with an 83% pass accuracy and 25 accurate dribbles. He's known for his flair, he's known for his creativity, his attacking runs. He's really working hard in the final thirds to create chances for his team. Obviously, it's proved to be a good signing for Sevilla so far. Our next hero of the week was Nianzou Kouassi of PSG, who scored twice in their 4-4 draw against Amiens. So it was pretty good from PSG perspective to get a draw in that game. They were, in fact, 3-0 down. But let's just have a look at how Nianzou Kouassi did in that particular game. So he got his 2 goals. He had 100 accurate passes, 91% pass success, 3 chances created. He was really good in the dribbling department with 100% dribble success, with 2 dribbles attempted and 2 dribbles succeeded. He also made a tackle. He made 6 aerials won, 2 interceptions and 8 recoveries. Let's have a look at how he's done so far this season. He's a young player, obviously, hasn't really played very much for Paris Saint-Germain this season. He's made 5 appearances so far. He's played 381 minutes, has scored his first goal, 2 goals as we've spoken about. He's made 3 key passes in this season, 232 accurate passes, 3 shots on target, 3 dribbles succeeded, and 1 tackle, which was the one the other day. 6 clearances and 3 interceptions. So it's really good to see him playing in the PSG side, starting to get a few more regular games in for them, which is not a usual scene for them, but he did play in the 5-0 win against Montpellier, 2-0 win against Lille, and he also played in the 4-1 win against Monaco, and a couple of Champions League game against Galatasaray and a game against Montpellier again there. So it's really good to see Nianzou Kouassi making the PSG side, and a well-deserved hero of the week this week. Next hero of the week is one that we've already actually touched upon in this episode. We spoke about Cauley Woodrow, who is the Barnsley striker. He scored twice and got an assist in their 3-0 win against Fulham. It was a real shock win for them. So let's have a look at how Cauley Woodrow performed. He was in a bit of a centre midfielder sort of position. He had 5 shots. Obviously he got his 2 goals and an assist. He had a 71% pass success rate, 25 accurate passes, 3 chances created. He was pretty decent, with duels winning. He won 5 duels. He made a clearance. He had 3 successful dribbles and a successful tackle as well for Cauley Woodrow. So let's have a look at how he's performed in the Championship so far this season. So he's played 27 games for Barnsley, who are bottom of the league, but he's still been a pretty decent performer with 13 goals and 2 assists. He's played 2,343 minutes. He's been pretty decent on the key passes front with 22 key passes, 682 accurate passes with a 75% success rate, and 34 shots on target with 26 dribbles succeeded. So pretty decent for Cauley Woodrow and Barnsley. He's been pretty decent this season, obviously sort of propelling them hopefully out of the relegation zone for them. But it's been good for Cauley Woodrow. Next hero of the week we've got for you is Pepe Reina, and I know he wasn't even the man of the match in that game, but we've decided to stick him in as the hero of the week just simply because of his performance and helping Villa stay in the game against Spurs. They did lose 3-2 to Tottenham, but he was pretty decent. He saved Son's penalty. He played 90 minutes. Conceded 3 goals obviously, but with 7 saves, 5 diving saves and 6 saves inside the box, 1 punch, 8 throws and 1 saved penalty obviously. He had 22 accurate passes, which is pretty decent for a keeper with a 78% pass success. He was alright really, Pepe Reina, in that game. Let's have a look and see how he's got on for Villa this season. Obviously newly signed, only played 4 games for them so far this season. 360 minutes played, 13 saves, 1 penalty save, and he's got 100% success rate with penalties. He only played 1 game for AC Milan when he was in the Serie A with an error leading to a goal, so I can only assume that's why he didn't play. But he got a 6.76 average rating when he plays for Villa, so that's pretty decent for him. A bit more of an obscure hero of the week is Carlos Tevez. Yeah, he still plays football. He plays in the Superliga in Argentina. He plays for Boca Juniors, and to say the least, he had a pretty decent game. He scored twice in a 4-0 victory against Central Cordoba de Santiago. He was very good. He also got an assist in that game. He was player of the match, judged by the Superliga Argentina company. But he created the most chances in the match with 4. He had 2 goals, an assist, 4 shots, 29 accurate passes, 87% pass success, 4 chances created. He did miss a penalty, so the chance for the hat-trick was there, but he did miss the penalty. But he was pretty decent in that game. So let's have a look at how he's done this season in the Argentina Superliga. So he scored 6 goals in 14 appearances this season. He's played 788 minutes. He's also got an assist, which is the one he got the other day. He's made 340 accurate passes with 85% success rate and 15 shots on target, which is 75% of his shots gone on target, which is pretty good. 100% of his tackles have succeeded with 7. So Carlos Tevez, well deserved, 7.04 rating per game on average. So those are your heroes of the week this week. Let's move on and talk about the 4 UEFA Champions League games that were played during midweek. So let's start with the first one, which was Atletico Madrid and Liverpool. Now, this was a classic Diego Simeone game for Atletico's point of view. Get the goal early, which they did through Saul Niguez, and sit back and defend for their lives almost throughout the rest of the game. It was a difficult game for Liverpool. Obviously, they lost 1-0 at Atletico at the new stadium, which was very nice to see. That Wanda Metropolitano in the lights. Delivers a very hostile reception when Liverpool's team bus has red skies almost due to the flames and flares and all sorts being thrown by Atletico fans. Liverpool didn't have a shot on target and they had 8 attempts. Atletico did have 2 shots on target in 7 attempts. Obviously one of them went in, that was from Saul. But Liverpool, they had 73 possession, but they just didn't put it to good use. They just could not break Atletico down. And that's really credit to Simeone's work at the club. Atletico, they made 21 tackles to Liverpool's team, which was pretty strange. For they were just making tackles all over the park, and that's compared to Liverpool's very, very few 9 tackles, which was, a bit different. You can see who's had the majority of the ball through that. Andy Robertson, the left back for Liverpool, the Scottish left back, said after the game, they're coming back to Anfield and we know our fans will be there, so let's see. So they're obviously Liverpool, they're very confident of getting themselves a win, and why shouldn't they be? The European champions, they're 22 points clear of the Premier League. Why wouldn't you be? So your man of the match, as voted for you guys by you guys on my Twitter, which is, if you've forgotten, is at L15weekly. But Renan Lodi got 50% of your vote, the Brazilian left back for Atletico, who has raised question marks over his ability to play in Atletico's system, but was superb last night, I must add. He had the most tackles in the game, 4, won the most duels in the game with 10, had 1 key pass, 10 ball recoveries and an 8.0 rating for Renan Lodi. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when they go back to Anfield, because they'll have the fans behind them, Liverpool. They won't be in that sort of hostile environment that Atletico were, but it'll be very interesting to see how they get on in the second leg. Move on to the other Tuesday night game, which was Borussia Dortmund and PSG. It was an exciting clash at the Signal Iduna Park, where Dortmund came out on top. They won 2-1 against PSG. Erling Braut Haaland was the hero, unsurprisingly. In the first half, PSG were very lucky to be 0-0 with Borussia, as they had plenty of counter-attacking chances. Sancho was excellent in that first half. He was just driving Borussia Dortmund forward. I must say, big compliment to Witsel and Chan, who clearly worked very well as a midfield pairing, both really in the engine room. Haaland obviously got Borussia Dortmund ahead with a goal after a deflected Guerrero shot fell straight to him to tap in from close range after 69 minutes. Neymar then equalised from an Mbappe cross to tap it in on 75 minutes. Haaland won the game with an amazing strike from the edge of the area, assisted by 17-year-old Gio Reyna. Honestly, the noise when that ball went in the back of the net was absolutely phenomenal. It was absolutely brilliant when that ball hit the back of the net. Borussia Dortmund had 12 shots, PSG had 10 shots, both had 3 on target. So it wasn't as unbalanced, but Borussia Dortmund having the better of the chances, really. The front three, can I just point this out before we go on to the man of the match? The front three for Borussia Dortmund for the final 33 minutes, all born in England, despite the fact that only one of them plays internationally for England. So Gio Reyna was born in Sunderland, Jadon Sancho born in London, and Braut Haaland was born in Leeds. And your man of the match, unsurprisingly, with 95% of the vote, was Erling Braut Haaland. Mbappe got 3% and Neymar got 2%, and we did put Hakimi out there, who I thought had a good game, but he got no percent. He scored twice, he got an 8.6 rating, 84% pass success, 2 shots on target, and they both went in for Haaland. A bit of a fun fact about that game and Haaland. Haaland did a 60-metre sprint in 6.64 seconds. The world record is 6.34. So, if that gives you... I didn't realise how rapid he was. He headed a corner away and then he sprinted like mad down the pitch to join the counter-attack, and it was brilliant from Erling Braut Haaland. And it'll be very interesting, as the Parc des Princes is not an easy place to go, but it'll be interesting to see if Dortmund can take over. And there were question marks over Dortmund's defence. No question marks in that game for me. All really good. Zagadou particularly for me, having a good game. Piszczek and Hummels also in that back three, but Zagadou really strong for the young man. And it'll be interesting to see where this tie goes. And we move on to Wednesday night's games, which brought a cracker and a bit of I wouldn't say a bore fest in the other game, but one that wasn't as exciting as we'd have thought. But the first game, the more exciting of the two, was at Atalanta 4, Valencia 1. It was the debut UEFA Champions League knockout round tie for Atalanta in their entire history, and they really smashed it 4-1 against Valencia, who are an experienced side. So let's have a look at how this tie played out. So firstly, Hataboa made a run towards the back post, and Gomez dashed a ball across the face of goal, and he tapped in for 16 minutes on the clock. Ilicic lashed a shot into the top left corner of the goal from 20 yards out after 42 minutes. Freuler, the Atalanta midfielder, made it 3, curling the ball from 25 yards, 57 minutes on the clock, so 2 stunners really in that game. And then Hataboa scored his second, Atalanta's 4th, holding off Diakabi and sliding a fairly weak shot into the corner of the goal. It was a pretty easy goal to score. but it was very weak. Cherichev pulled one back after he intercepted Palomino's wayward crossfield ball and slid it into the net. Atalanta marginally edged possession with 51%. Valencia did dominate in terms of shots with 18 shots compared to Atalanta's 11. But you can clearly see who had the better of the chances in that game. So let's have a look at your man of the match, as voted for you on my Twitter. And that is Alejandro Gomez, who won with 50% of the vote. Ilicic got 17% and Hateboer got 33% of the vote. So Gomez, 87% pass success, which I can confirm was 100% until about 60 minutes in the game. You would have seen, if you follow me on Twitter, that he misplaced one after about 65 minutes, and I got all upset because my stat hadn't quite worked. But 2 chances created, 28 accurate passes, 52 touches of the ball, an assist, and a 7.4 rating for Alejandro Gomez. Pretty decent for Atalanta. You'd say the tie's done, but Valencia did get that away goal. So, you know, nothing's said and done in the Champions League when there's a second leg. Still another 90 minutes. Valencia could go and score 4, just like Atalanta did. We'll have to see in the next leg. Our fourth and final tie we're going to talk about here on L15 Weekly was Tottenham 0, RB Leipzig 1. It was a really dominant display by Leipzig, another team playing their first UEFA Champions League knockout tie. They're managed by Julian Nagelsmann, who it just made it into a fine display for Leipzig. They won the game after Davies took out Konrad Laimer in the box. Timo Werner scored the all-important penalty, clinical in those sorts of moments. Timo Werner. 57% of possession went to Leipzig. Leipzig created 3 big chances compared to Spurs' 1. Spurs, they really did let Leipzig come into their ground and take complete control of the game. They barely saw the ball in that first half. Leipzig were just so over them. And Tottenham, was lucky to be 0-0 at half-time. Mourinho, obviously, probably, I don't know if that was his plan or whether that wasn't his plan, or Leipzig were just so good, whether they were meant to sit back or not. But they're at home. Why let Leipzig come into your own backyard and just take control of the game? Leipzig bettered Spurs in shots, chances, big chances, accurate passes, pass success and corners. I personally think Nagelsmann will be disappointed that his side didn't kill the game off, but they'll feel they had enough control over the tie to be alright with the second leg, really. I think they should have been 2 or 3 up. Spurs will really hope to overturn this game when they head to Leipzig on March 10th. They'll feel they can. Your man of the match, voted by you guys on Twitter, was Ethan Ampadu, who I was really impressed with in this game. He really impressed me in the game. Just he's on loan from Chelsea, obviously, but he played 90 minutes. He had 93 passes, which was a match high. He had 94% pass accuracy, another match high. 7 accurate passes, 2 duels won, 3 clearances, 4 interceptions, and a 7.3 rating. A really assured display from the Chelsea loanee, really. He wants to go back to Chelsea, but he wants to see out the season at Leipzig, and I don't see why Chelsea next season give him a chance. Maybe alongside Fikayo Tomori. What a centre-back pairing that would be. But he was really good last night, Ethan Ampadu, and it'd be interesting to see when they go to Leipzig, Tottenham, whether they can pull this around, whether Mourinho can talk some sense into them. So on this week's episode, I am joined by Tushar from BVB Buzz. So Tushar, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, yeah. So, first question I've got for you. You're 3rd in the Bundesliga, you're 4 points off top spot. How has Dortmund's season gone this year?
I think it's been a disappointment so far. Dortmund were one of the favourites going into the title race, and many expected us to do really well. But even though we are in the title race, we haven't really performed as per expectations. We have dropped points in games we should not have. We haven't defended that well, and we have let points slip against some of the bottom teams. And I think there's a bit of disappointment with the coach, the way he has chosen some of the players. He hasn't rotated enough, but we're still in the title race, so
yeah,
it's going. It could be better, but as long as we're in the title race, I think it's okay.
Yeah, and with Borussia Dortmund obviously not doing as well as you'd have hoped, but who has been key to keep you in that title race? Which players have stood out for you this season?
I think the main players have been Jadon Sancho. He has been performing really well. He's been producing world-class performances this season, he has been Dortmund's best player. Other than Sancho, Haaland has taken off since joining last month. He has been brilliant. And Marco Reus, Julian Brandt have done really well in bets. Torgan Hazard was really good at the first half of the season. He hasn't been able to reach that level since the start of the new year. Defensively, Matt Summers and Zagadou have both done a decent job. Rafael Guerrero and Ashraf Hakimi have also done okay, but there remains some problems with their defensive ability.
And, we've touched on Lucien Favre earlier, but why hasn't he been the successful appointment that you'd hope he would be at Dortmund?
I think he hasn't done that bad of a job, considering the circumstances he came in. He has been back really well in the transfer market, so I think the expectations are really high that he would lead the team to the title. But there are limitations with him. He hasn't rotated the squad enough. He has just frozen out some players, Alcacer, Julian Weigl.
Yeah.
Two of the players who left last month, they were frozen out for long periods. Mahmoud Dahoud as well. He has just, sometimes he's been accused of playing players despite their underperformances, like Manuel Akanji. He has been dropped recently.
Yeah, he has.
But he made quite a few high-profile errors. Marco Reus also, he wasn't dropped. He was not dropped, I shouldn't say dropped. He wasn't rested enough, so he got injured. He's now out for a month. But I think he has done a decent job. He could do better, but he has done a decent job as long as Dortmund are in the title race.
Yeah.
If Dortmund don't win the title this season, I think he will be sacked.
Yeah. And with, you beat PSG 2-1 the other day, how did you feel that game went for you?
I think Dortmund played quite well. It was one of the best performances of the season. Could have easily ended 3-1, 4-1.
Yeah.
Had it not been to that one Zagadou slip, PSG would not have had a single chance, I think.
Yeah.
PSG were outplayed. Favre showed his quality, I think, and Dortmund were just up for it. The crowd was up for it, and I think that's put the players on as well. That's a massive win. I think Dortmund were big underdogs going into that game, but now we have a chance going into Paris of qualifying for the quarterfinals.
And do you think you can? Do you as the Dortmund BVB Buzz page? Do you think that you can hold out and win this game?
It all depends on the defending. I think we'll go to Paris and score there. We have enough options in our attack. Leroy should be back by then. Julian Brandt should be back by then. And Emre Can and Axel Witsel have formed a really good partnership in midfield. So I think it all depends on how we defend. If we defend like we did on Tuesday, I think there's every chance we can go through. But we have also seen, like we did a couple of weeks ago against Leverkusen, Dortmund can concede 2 goals in the space of a minute. So you never know. I'm confident though, because Dortmund will score, so that away goal doesn't mean that much, because Dortmund have one of the best attacks in Europe at the moment. And with Sancho, Rose, Haaland and Brandt in that team, I think they will definitely score. So they can keep things tight, they will definitely go through.
And in terms of the Bundesliga, where do you think that you'll finish this season?
I think there's every chance we can win the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
It's still 4 points. We have a tough set of fixtures coming up. We have a tough run-in. We have to play Leipzig and Hoffenheim in the last 2 games of the season. So we need to just make sure we don't drop points against teams we should be winning against. We've got Werder Bremen this Sunday or this Saturday, and hopefully, if Dortmund can beat teams they should be beating, then Dortmund will win the title, I think, because Haaland has been a revelation. Yeah. So with Haaland and Sancho leading this team, I think Dortmund will win the title. But obviously, Bayern Munich are now the favourites. They have just gone up to a whole other level since the winter break. So I think they're the favourites, but Dortmund have every chance.
Okay, well, thank you, Tushar, for coming on and talking to us. You can go and look at BVB Buzz's blog, and you can also go and check out the Twitter page. Thank you for joining us, Tushar.
Thank you. It was great joining you guys.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of L15 Weekly. You can also go and check out my social medias. My Twitter is at L15weekly. So is my Instagram. And you can also go and check out the new website. I can't quite remember the link for that one off the top of my head, so you'll have to go and check in the description for that. And whilst you're there, you can have a look at our wonderful people that we've had on this podcast. You can go and check out their own work, which in their own rights is absolutely cracking. So thank you very much for everybody for being on this episode, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.